me, so did you, as far as your background in the ski business, so did you spend your entire career in the ski business at Caledon?
I did. I did. I joined the ski business in 1967 as a youngster and retired out of it in 2017. So just 50 years.
Yes. And and you, like you just said, the entire time was at Caledon.
It was, yeah. I was
Oh
quite
wow.
fortunate to be involved in a great club like Caledon almost from the inception, and saw through most of its development over 5 decades. It was quite an interesting ride.
When did Caledon start?
It was started in 1958,
Okay.
small farm north of Inglewood, Ontario. Ross and Helen Wortley were the club founders, and Helen was of Danish descent and had a love of skiing. And they decided to put a rope tow on their farm. It was a rented farm, by the way, and they put a rope tow. Ross was a salesperson for Argo Block and also knew a lot about the quarry business in the locale. So he got an old truck and vulcanized a tire, and they had a great big rope tow there, and they started to, accumulate friends. And the first lodge of the club was actually a converted chicken coop on their farm. So they were kind of they're running out of terrain. There was a lot of interest. The founding club was on rented property, which wasn't an ideal circumstance. So Ross and Helen set out on a journey to discover some property, hopefully in the area that was for sale. Just not too far from their farm, between the farm and the site of Caledon Ski Club today, there was an old ski area by the name of Toronto Ski Club, which basically went defunct just around the time of the war, and has since been relocated up in Collingwood and has a great storied history up there as well. But Ross and Helen discovered this acreage just to the northwest of the Forks of the Credit. They scouted it out, looked at it, and they just turned to each other, and Ross said, "This is it. We can do something here." Trouble is, they had to buy it. They didn't have any money. So a good friend of theirs that they played bridge with, Doug Kendall, he said, well, "Why don't you get a bunch of people together and charge them $25 each for a membership, and have some key stakeholders and charge them." That was $25 for a 1 year membership, by the way. And he said, "Well, why don't you charge these people $500 and but give them a 50 or a 10 year membership?" So that's what they did. And they amassed the great sum of $5,000 to put a deposit on a $20,000 property. And thus it began. The early days were a pilgrimage of skiers from the one location to the other via a muskeg tractor towing a long rope tow rope, hauling skiers across the escarpment to the new property.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that was met with great enthusiasm, except for the long arms. You can always tell the Caledon members had one arm longer than the other.
Yeah.
So, they had this property. Something had to be done with it. Trails were cut the early days. And the club put its first tow in 1966. It was a pommel lift, and it was constructed on what we refer to as the East Hills. And at the same time, they had constructed a long rope tow up the South Hills, probably one of the longest rope tows ever in Ontario. It had a halfway bridge where you got off one rope and got on another rope, and away you went. And then when the T-bar era started, and the first T-bar went in 66, 67, a little base lodge was built. The second T-bar went in 1968.
When you start talking about T-bars, who were the manufacturers of
Oh,
the?
the original T-bar was a very heavy duty T-bar. It was manufactured by Timberland Ellicott. It also had a Skyway badge on it, being a subsidiary of TE. Subsequent T-bars were just badged Skyway, their nameplates. They had in very small lettering the TE symbol or words across the top. The 68 lift, it was kind of unique. It was what we called the light duty T-bar or upside down T's. So the small end of the stick was at the bottom, and the large end of the stick was at the top, and it didn't have much cushion in it. and it was considerably cheaper than the original T-bar, but the hill was shorter and kind of didn't mandate a heavy duty, expensive T-bar like that one. So we put that one in, and that's about the time I became involved in the club. And I was just picking rocks, really, looking for my 25 cents an hour. And we were neighbors to the Wortley farm, and so I befriended their children, and eventually I just migrated over to have a part-time job there, which became, through school and after school, and became general manager in 1988.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, it's quite fun because we worked through, all elements of the industry, right to the thrill of and the privilege of managing Caledon for 30 years, which was pretty nice.
Now, when you say general manager, was it just of the operational standpoint, just like take care of the ski hill, or was it more involved?
It was more involved. I was actually CEO / general manager. The club was incorporated in 1962. So it's quite atypical. So we were actually a share capital corporation. And that was, at that time, most of the clubs were membership clubs. But our members bought shares, which provided capital for future expansion. And the club grew exponentially that way. And by the 70s, by 1980, we had 2,000 members.
Oh, wow.
And, yeah, it was quite substantial. And, we had 3 rope tows, 4 T-bars, and we were really rolling along. So we had a board of directors, being a corporation. We had 12 directors, and we still do. And Ross, the founder of the club, he was the original general manager until his retirement, in which case I succeeded him. And the board was an elected board. They served 4 years, and there's a 3-member rotation every 4 years. And when Ross retired, he was also the president of the board, and they considered that, well, maybe we shouldn't have the GM and the president, as maybe it could be conflict. So they kind of separated that, but they felt that because of my tenure and my experience, I should have a title that gave a little bit of support to my role at the board level. And essentially, I met so many people from so many walks of lives, and it was quite interesting. I was constantly educating people about the industry. I mean, they were skiers, but my requirements were somewhat different than skiers were. Obviously, I had a large degree of financing to take care of, and a large staff body. By then, by the 80s and 90s, we were running 220 employees. We had 2 full-service lodges. Then we had 4 chairlifts and 2 T-bars, and it was a big deal. We're into the new era of grooming and snowmaking, and snowmaking's the whole thing. And I mean, that's real. I think what kept me involved in the industry is I had a background in surveying, where I did 3 summers surveying. So I mean, I liked building, and I liked surveying and laying things out. So I kind of took that skill set and moved into the industry. And as the technologies were constantly evolving, like snowmaking was incredible. In 3 or 4 decades, every 5 years, there was new equipment, new ideas, and some were good, some were terrible. And we tried to stay away from the terrible ones, but not always. And we became really well known for our ability to provide consistent conditions and a long ski season in Southern Ontario. We weren't a club on the ridge. We're a club pretty far south, on a smaller ridge of the escarpment. That reputation, we succeeded in attracting a lot of members. We had a waiting list. It was great. The club was really flourishing. It was still and still is, a family-filled, fun environment. It's just everyone kind of knew everybody, even though it was getting larger. And there's a lot of pressures on the finance. So things went up and up and up and up, and the club became more involved from management structure and just as an operation. And our full-time staff body grew. In the early days, in the early days, there was just a couple people. I should mention that I can owe a large degree of success in my role to my wife, Gail. And her mother was the original office manager at the club. And their office was down in Cooksville, and that's where Gail hailed from. And eventually, our meeting, and we became a team. We married, and we became the administration team for Caledon for 30 years. So
that's awesome.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's kudos to you and your team for being able to. I know how difficult it is to, I think of here in Ohio, but I mean, just the small family ski areas and the challenges with the environment and snowmaking, and it's not an easy business to keep profitable and, keep innovating and keep them, prosperous and not going out of business.
Yeah. It's something, because, you go through periods and, your bottom line is pretty skinny. Mm-hmm. And, you're trying to attract capital and preserve capital for future development. And it worked out. We had to borrow money here and there, and we had two very minor assessments through the history of the club. It just became a whole series of, okay, well, we're changing out T-bars for chairlifts, and then all of a sudden, and 25, 30 years later, you're putting another chairlift in to replace the early chairlift. And the club is getting larger, so the men body grew, departments grew and were created. And I hired a fellow that he worked with me for 10 years before he retired, Craig McDonald. And he succeeded me as general manager on my recommendation. So the club has benefited from an extreme amount of continuity through its tenure, like its lifespan. We celebrated, our 60-year anniversary. We're rolling fast towards the 70th, and the club is very, very full right now. I mean, we had some turn downs through economic setbacks that affected everybody. Yeah, stateside up here, the economy's really contracted for a while. We lost members, and it's essentially a discretionary amount of money, to join a club and pay your fees, and so that was difficult. And we went through the most recent one was the COVID experience, but it was a little different for us. We had to shut down, obviously, for a period. But our strength has always been our proximity to Toronto, and we're not the biggest hills, but having consistent snow and being a club where you could commute to on a daily basis and go home, maybe go to a hockey game, theater, social, whatever you needed to do. It wasn't like you had to invest in a real estate property to spend your weekend skiing. So you could call it a day club if you may, but that was good for us. People discovered that through COVID, when things were easing, there was this great opportunity to be outside because our restrictions were much less, and our membership really grew again, to the extent now where there's a considerable waiting list, which they're very fortunate. And once again, the club is looking forward on embarking on perhaps more expansion in the way of upgrading some lodges, and it was a great cycle. And it probably could still be there. Having a tremendous passion for the industry, but I think I started taking out chairlifts that I put 25 years earlier, and I thought, it's a little repetitive, and I put a lot of hours in here. So I think if I can move along gracefully and still enjoy the benefit of the club, which we're very fortunate. We are, my wife and I are honorary members, and it's really nice to be still involved in that basis. And I still periodically keep in touch with some of my earlier colleagues. We're all pretty much retiring out of the industry. And this past spring, we celebrated the 60th anniversary of the Ontario Ski Resorts Association, which is now Ski Ontario. So a huge gathering. All the old slides came out, and And Lloyd Edwards, his name was up there. It's one of the original technical directors for the Ontario Ski Resorts Association. That was pretty nice. Getting back to Valley Schuss quickly, I think I met Lloyd at a very early age, and he was quite a mentor, and he didn't mind sharing information, which is great. And he was a good pal of Ross Wortley, the founders. Everyone knew everyone back in the 60s. It was a very small family of people crazy enough to be in the ski business in Southern Ontario. So that's a very brief synopsis of my journey, with a lot of stops along the way that I could probably expand on, but we'd be here all day.